that our institutions in the United States are not designed to protect us. We have to protect our institutions. And so that's not mine, I'm stealing it. So I'll give credit to this anonymous author for the first time. But we do have to protect our institutions. We finally got our nice Bridgeport screening of this film. It premiered at the Coney Island Film Festival about 1.5 years ago. We played in Bethel, that was also a sold out crowd. But this one's really special just because really Barnum's story really kind of started here in Bridgeport. You know, you have that amazing seaside statue. So it's up to us if we want to continue his legacy. There's been, my little director's statement where I talk about, the United States is ripping statues down across the country of, for example, a lot of the Confederate soldiers and Robert E. Lee. And, we need a modern perspective to look back on what our history was and why we're where we are today. But a lot of some people that are ill-informed are trying to lump Barnum into that because of one of his early acts. Her name was Joyce Heth. I didn't really include that in the film. I wanted to include a wider story about what was going on in the Civil War. Barnum literally lost everything. So that American Museum, when that museum was built, more people were visiting than that actually lived in New York. That was sort of America's first Walt Disney World. And they had everything in there. But because he was displaying Pauline Cushman, I think that was her name, she was a woman who dressed up like a man to be a spy in the Civil War. And then after it was over, she was guest lecturing in there, and there were things like that. John Brown's, he had a wax figure of John Brown, but he was actually wearing John Brown's clothing. It wasn't just like a wax piece. It was actually like the actual reincarnation of that. And then because of all these, and then he was running for politics to actually try to get laws passed to abolish slavery in the United States. They burned his museum down. So I don't think it's fair to lump that onto the Barnum statue in Bethel, and I hope that remains for years and years forever. And I would say the same, obviously, about the one in Seaside Park. So if you do feel a stake in what our country is today and what it can be, I hope that you'll, internalize take something away from this film tonight, and the fact that you got to actually see it in Bridgeport. I feel like it's not just a visual, but there's also an emotional connection. And do whatever you will with it. Maybe it means visiting the Barnum Museum, telling people the importance of it, the history of it, and maybe donate money too. So, so Tom wanted me to ask the first question. This is Kathy's hometown, so I'm going to hand it off to you first. But now that you've seen the film a couple of times, you didn't cry this time, which is nice. What's your perspective on, from what you saw back then, and kind of bring us up to date, even beyond with the, the Barnum's great-great-granddaughter, and what's going on today with the movie, with the museum?
Well, what's interesting is it is hard to look back, and that's why I was so happy that so many of you, Rosanna, that are here. This is my posse, so watching that for the first time by myself, first of all, I haven't worn that jewelry and that lipstick in about 10 years. Okay, and I think I have more pictures of me and Bill Finch than I do of me and my husband. So it always makes me smile when I look back at these things. But really with the museum, I think that was really rather enlightening of me to think in those early moments that was an opportunity. And that perhaps Barnum, PTSD, that Barnum was the teacher of that. Because it was hard. And the one thing that I know is that Barnum, yes, he was the original Disney. People don't give him credit for being the first public, place of amusement. Up until Barnum opened the American Museum, those places were really restricted to the wealthy and the educated and the traveled. So it was the Irish in New York were not welcome. That was the challenge back then. Barnum opened the doors to everybody who could pay their 25 cents. So it really was. And fast forward to right now, the fascinating thing is when we realized we had to create a museum that would do tribute to P.T. Barnum. It was like, how am we going to find it? And we knew that the traditional museum of an object in the case of a label copy was not going to cut it. And we found BRC Imagination Arts, who we're still working with. And Bob Rogers, who you saw, is actually one of Disney's original Imagineers. He is one of the original Imagineers for Epcot and worked on a lot of those rides. And we knew that blend of scholarship and showmanship was going to happen as we created the museum. And so I think everybody knows, because I'm not very quiet, we have invested now over, nobody would talk to me until we knew what it was going to be and how much it was going to cost. It took me to raise $6 million to be able to tell people what it's going to be and how much it's going to cost. And with that, coupled with economic impact data and market analysis, we have the data. The state of Connecticut said, good job, get it done. $6.9 million appropriation we received last year. So the building will be scaffolded this summer. And right when right before the tornado hit, the National Parks and the Department of the Interior elevated the Barnum building to national significance. And they were like, fantastic, let's make the building a National Historic Landmark. There's only about 2,500 in the country. Bridgeport doesn't have any. We have a whole bunch of things on the National Register, but no NHLs. So they were like, okay, let's move the Barnum Museum. It'll be the first. When we got hit with the tornado, we lost the structural integrity. And they said, you're off the list. As if that wasn't enough. Not even 2 years ago, I'm looking at Wes, not even 2 years ago, I got an email from the National Park Services that said, we just got off the phone with the Connecticut State Historic Preservation Office. You fixed the east wall, you're stabilizing the dome, you're on your path, you're back on the list, get us the document. And right now we are in peer review to become Bridgeport's first National Historic Landmark. And there's a lot of you here that have been on this journey with us. Rosa is one of our muses. Anna, I'm sorry, I'm not seeing everybody, but thanks to you and your ongoing inspiration, we're where we are today. Thank you.
So Kathy has worked tirelessly. I don't remember if you called me on the phone or somehow we connected. It wasn't just Kathy too. Your amazing staff was really generous with their time with me too. I had unprecedented access. I'm sure you saw that in the film. I mean, literally the day, it wasn't even a full 24 hours it happened. And you invited me in the museum, and I got to wear a hard hat and a face mask. I mean, there was glass in the air. We were breathing glass particulates. It was dangerous. I think about. I got a lot of clay on my camera. And even the Bridgeport Yard, the trains that were coming in, the Ringling Bros, Barnum Bailey circus. I think 9 of the performances in the film were shot here in Bridgeport. Most of the film was shot in Bridgeport. It was like half Bethel, half Bridgeport. But that was, walking around the train tracks with Metro North. In a post 9/11 world, I just showed up early that morning, and it turns out, if you remember the guy who goes, "There's a sucker born every minute." He was a hockey player, and I had just been filming up in Canada where he played. I didn't know that, so he kind of like, I don't know, he's like, I trust this guy, he's all right. So he got me an official, I shouldn't be telling this, but he doesn't work there anymore. He got me an official Metro North jacket and hat, so it kind of looked like I worked there. Because as you imagine, when the Ringling Brothers Barnum Bailey train comes to Bridgeport, a lot of press shows up to get it. So all the press was held by the Bridgeport's finest, Bridgeport Police Department, kept everybody across the street. So they're all using their zoom lenses and everything. And as you saw, I was like on the tracks, they were like grabbing my jacket, like, you're too close to the train. And the elephants coming by, I'm right underneath them. So I'm getting it from the Metro North people. So after it was over, he's like, what were you doing over there with those guys? And the head Metro North guy goes, says, was he with you? He's like, no, but we wanted you to think that he was, so you leave him alone. So that's how I got that train footage. So for Dave, now that you've seen this movie a couple of times, I wonder what you might want to talk about. I know you were super tired when you did your interview because we basically pulled a bunch of all-nighters the night we went to the Polish Salad.
I think most of it was about 2 a.m. Yeah, but that's how that's kind of how this project went. It was Corey and I in the studio at 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning sometimes, and I think he kept me awake. I think I kept you awake. It was great. It was great. It was great camaraderie between the two of us because we both learned about P.T. Barnum together, really. Because he was studying the history and he was filming the history of Barnum as I was creating Sculptor. So, oh, sorry.
We've done this 5 times and he does this all the time.
Anyway, so it was great because we discovered a lot about Barnum together and did a lot of our research together, which helped me a great deal with the sculpture, especially the photographs. Because Corey and I both went through archives of Kathy's down in the basement of the museum, and we were discovering all these amazing photographs with all different faces and notices and profiles and things. I think you were the person that kind of tipped me off about the lenses and how wonky the cameras were back then. So, thanks. You saved me a lot of trouble. I ended up just going with like maybe a dozen pictures, and all the rest I just put away because it was just too conflicting. And so that's the likeness that we did. We also wanted to portray him, a little bit younger than the statue of Bridgeport, because that was done towards the end of his life, and we wanted to portray him about the time he founded the circus. So it was when he was about 60 or 65, so in that range. The statue down in Seaside Park did help me a great deal because I had no photograph of the back of his head. And at that point, I was completely stumped on the bald spot. I just could not figure out the bald spot. I kept trying different bald spots, nothing looked right. And I said, oh my God, Thomas Ball sculpted that portrait from life, so the bald spot must be accurate. So that's why we went down there, that's why I jumped up, was to get the bald spot. And also the shoes, because I never quite could get a bead on what Barnum would have worn every day for shoes. And so the statue helped me there with the shoes. It's a fun thing.
And you went to school here in Bridgeport. You're at Bridgeport, Connecticut.
Yes, I did. I was at the University of Bridgeport. And my dormitory was right next to the statue. Right. It was at Sealy Hall, which was right next to, named after a famous Barnum person. And so I used to look at the statue all the time. Ironically, at the bald spot. His dorm was behind the statue, so you would have thought that I had a good understanding of that bald spot, but no.
So this is Janice Morro. She's also a really amazing sculptor and earner. She had a little cameo appearance. You want to talk about how you ended up in the film and how we met each other, and in the movie you say that he's this great man and you have to put all this in this piece, but that's kind of where we leave you. So now that you had a chance to see the movie for the first time, really, what do you think of the piece and your thoughts on it?
Well, Dave and I live very close to each other, so I actually saw the progress from the beginning. So I would go every once in a while to the studio and we would have conversation. As artists do, when you're creating something, you need outside guidance, from your peers. So we would have conversation, and it was fun, I mean, your life was on the line, so I was able to have some fun.
I had two friends who were sculptors, Janice and also Ira Bruce Rains, who they're sort of like your proofreaders, because you're working on a piece for so many months that at some point you just don't see the most obvious thing. It's like incredible. Like I kept building the face out and the nose out, and then Ira came by one day and he said, the ears are a little far back in the head. I said, oh my God, I started been building the face out, but I haven't moved the ears to match where they are in relation to the thing. I didn't catch that until he saw it. Now, if I had covered up the sculpture and not seen it for like a month or two, it would have been really obvious. So that's why we have, our peers come by and we all do that. Each other's work all the time. You kind of come by and just get a fresh eye on it. You go stale on it after a while.
It's another set of eyes,
Yeah, I was working on a piece, a couple years ago, and a friend came by and she had something to say about the drapery that was so obvious. I mean, it was unbelievable. I was missing buttons and buttonholes, all kinds of stuff. So, you don't see it after all. So thank you, Janice, for coming by.
It's my pleasure. It was great. It was great to see the whole progression of it.
Yeah.
It was really beautiful. Quite honestly, it was great.
So are you going to do an audience
Yeah,
question?
we have 2 runners with microphones, so if you have a
There's
question,
two runners.
raise your
If you have
hand.
a question, you can raise your hand. And a runner will hand a microphone to you so that they'll hear your question.
Something like 20 years ago, I was up at the Discovery Museum, and I did a story about the fact that they had this large collection of Barnum memorabilia. It seemed to be the wrong place for it. It's not at the Barnum Museum, it was at the Discovery Museum, and they had Jenny Lynn's piano and a bunch of shirts that belonged to
Where's
P.T.
the Discovery
Barnum.
Museum?
At the
Oh.
Discovery Museum.
At Discovery.
And I was wondering if in the intervening time that stuff had been acquired by the Barnum Museum or where it all was now.
In 2000, I'm speaking for you, Bill. In 2003, predating you, the director was Paul Audley at the time, and the Discovery Museum was streamlining their mission statement. So we coordinated a museum transfer, which is something that has to go through very formal processes with attorneys to review these things. So the Discovery Museum actually transferred a couple of hundred Barnum-related artifacts, documents, the piano that you mentioned, the chairs, the tremendous amount of material to the museum. So we are in the possession of all of that now. So, and it's only sectioned, you know, and a lot of it actually is digitized. We got a $250,000 digitization grant from the National Endowment. So if you go to our website, into collections through the Connecticut Digital Archive, you can actually pull up that and you will see the Discovery Museum cited as the transfer, the ownership transfer to the Barnum Museum collection. And we saved a lot of that stuff when the tornado hit. We had a few items out. So we actually saved 20,000 objects, relics, documents, archival materials when that hit. We only lost one thing. So that's a real tribute to the army of, you know, Connecticut conservators and curators that came out to help us deal with the contaminated objects. And we were lucky. So that's where everything is. We lost, when the water started, we got more water in from the tornado than we did either Irene or Superstorm Sandy, believe it or not. And all of the document racks were in the basement. Not anymore. So all of that just became soaked. You saw some of that. And there was one 1872 autobiography. Because we became a chain gang, just getting everything out to air dry it, because the mayor of the city shut the city down. And so nobody was coming in to help. We had an emergency manual. I actually wrote it, and everything was in it, you know, from hurricanes to alien invasions, you name it, it was all in there. And tornado was in it, and it led with when you get the warning. And I know a lot of you were in this, nobody knew what the hell happened, so there was no warning. So we had no time to mobilize anything out of dangerous areas. That's why so much was so severely damaged. And we actually still have objects at conservation laboratories. But we lost that autobiography because it was put through our chain gang into a corner that, as we were constantly, every couple of hours, turning everything over because we couldn't get anything to freezers, it was missed. And the entire thing molded over. Fortunately, we had multiple 1872 autobiographies in the collection, so we were very fortunate. But we saved, the Tom Thumb carriage was the most damaged. And try to explain hygroscopic shock to an insurance adjuster. It was literally 5 years of fighting the insurance companies. 5 years. You're battle worn after that, and I refused to give in because at that mark they said, look, there's still $638,000 left in the policy. Let's just settle for $50,000. It's been a long time. I rejected it. And somebody at the board was like, well, when are we just going to settle? And I'm like, I will hunt them down in hell. 2 months later, we got the full $600,000. Did I answer your question? question? I think I went off tangent. Sorry.
So when I was doing my research, Kathy had explained that all this stuff is supposed to go to the Barnum Museum. So like, costumes and glasses and hats and things like that. And all the paper stuff is actually supposed to go to the library. So all those photographs, I made an appointment and I went to the library and we set up a table and put up our lights. But you actually have a pretty extensive collection of photographs too.
Well, that goes back to when the building, that's from the 1930s, 40s, when the archival documents at the museum were reverted to the Bridgeport Public Library collection and stuff stayed at the museum. So that's not the discovery transfer.
Still very interesting.
Yes.
I have a question. Is there a Friends of P.T Barnum group that you have assembled?
Thank you so much for asking that. We, sadly, with everything that we were doing, we have small vision membership. The back gallery we actually opened in 2012, and we get 8,000 people coming in this capacity. But just last week, I met with a gentleman who has been a long-time supporter of the museum to revive the Friends of the Barnum Museum membership as we're moving into the campaign to get the second half of the campaign going. So yes, please watch. We're going to be doing that. We also have, if you even go to the website now, you can donate or become a member. It's all, and technology is a great thing. And you can even sign up for like an installment gift to, once a month or every 6 months. But yes, we are re-engaging the members because what we want to do is take one of the rooms in the re-envisioned Barnum Museum and dedicate it to the Friends. So everybody that contributes to, whether it's Tom Thumb's space or Jenny Lynn's space, that it will be from the group of beloved Barnum, friends.
And my second question, are there any documentation at the State Library on P.T Barnum?
Yeah, every museum on the planet has got something of Barnum's. I keep saying that, he's been dead for over 100 years, the only man that totally exhausts me. There are pieces in the Smithsonian and the Museum of Natural History, the State Museum, you name it, they got it. Even the state archives, because he was a legislator, his documents are at the state. England, all the time. And interestingly, Barnum plays in France. We're not quite sure why, but the French love him. So they have, and remember, when we did a lot of our research, we found out Barnum gets more clicks, more views in France than Abraham Lincoln. Because think about it, to us, Abraham Lincoln is local history, okay? Barnum was all over Europe all the time, and he left traces of himself, so there's more of a fascination. Yeah.
First of all, I want to, I'll make sure you see that it's not like 18 years, but I'll use it anyway.
First of all, I want to thank you very, very much. This was fantastic. I did not expect to see tonight what I have had the pleasure of envisioning.
Thank you very much.
I talked to you on the phone. I raised my children in this area, and I used to take them to the Barnum Museum when they were little kids. I told you, I remember the third floor with the miniature circus all around. We used to go to the gift shop in the basement, and it was not a clip joint. They didn't overcharge you. They sold nice little things that we could afford for the children, and it was an absolute delight. You also stated that there's some open. Could we actually come to see what is open at the museum?
Yeah. With the support of the State Historic Preservation Office, we got a survey and planning grant in 2012 to take what was the emergency storage room and turn it into it's more like visible storage. So we're open Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays from 11 to 3. And we have a fantastic interpreter that can take you through. Oh, and Charisse is here. One of my interpreters is here. You can talk to Charisse, stand up, so everybody can see you. I'm sorry, there she is. And we had how many people in today? 100 and like.
We had about 80 people, and then they
Yeah, we had about 80 people in today. So people are coming. So we're not a full functioning museum, but we're on the cusp of being the first immersive history museum in New England. So it's a fascinating journey, and I thank Sharice too for showing up every week. Thank you for your kind words.
This message is for Corey. You did a wonderful job, and I really enjoyed your photographs and the story about Jumbo, the elephant. But his story can be a whole film unto itself, especially the publicity he got when he boycotted his trip to America and was stubborn on the pier and had a lot of publicity in the London papers. But his heroic story is, I don't know how true it is, but supposedly he sacrificed his life to push baby Bridgeport off the train track, and baby Bridgeport had a little cast on him, supposedly. And would you be interested in doing another documentation on just Jumbo and the history of that story there?
Well, thank you. I wouldn't mind going back to Canada again. It was fun up there. They really have embraced that Jumbo story, as you saw. In mid-1980s, they put that amazing concrete Jumbo up there. It was under repair. For a while, it was pink, because they kind of put primer on it. So for like 2 years, it was this big pink elephant. There's a lot of postcards in that time, if you see it. There's another funny story about the way it is. You're supposed to position elephants facing a certain way. I don't remember which way it is, but it's facing the correct way. The problem is, pardon me, the problem is it's the entrance to town. So when you drive in, you see Barnum's butt. It's also kind of funny. Yeah, Barnum told this big wise tale that, Jumbo, as Andrew McClellan was saying, I think I put this in the film. I've seen things that didn't make it, and I think they're in the film. I've seen the film so many times, but I think that he said that Jumbo was this thing that America and the world could project onto him. If you wanted him to be altruistic, Jumbo was altruistic. If you wanted him to be a hero, Jumbo could be a hero. He was an elephant. You could say it about your teddy bear if you wanted to. And so one of the stories, Jumbo by that time, elephants can turn. And Jumbo, London, there was a story that London kind of didn't want Jumbo anymore. Winston Churchill wrote about him when he was a little kid, and the Queen and the family, and there was all this outrage. Barnum loved the outrage, it was just more publicity. He's like, fine, wait it out, and his trainer had to come along. But they knew that it was kind of a risky proposition to travel him around. And towards the end of his life, Jumbo was kind of starting to turn. My friends were saying, if anything, Jumbo sacrificed himself, but we're not really sure about the Tom Thumb story. The other little elephant's name is Tom Thumb. So Barnum created this story that, what really happened was they didn't have walkie-talkies, and the thing was screaming up over a hill, and there was no signal to say slow down. And Jumbo just would not get off the tracks. That's the true story of what happened. So he told this big tale that, the little elephant that was with him, he died saving his life by pushing the little guy off the track, and to help people feel good again, to project this amazing impression of what Jumbo was. And then he said, a dead elephant is easier to tour. You don't have to feed him. You don't have to pay the trainer. There's two of them, so it worked out for everybody.
And he doubled his gig because he traveled with skeletal remains and the carcass 2 different directions.
Yeah.
So we had double Jumbos. But the Jumbo Skeletal Assembly is in the collection of the National Museum of American History in New York City, under conservation actually. So again, another piece of Barnum.
But the other weird thing, because it's in the American Museum of Natural History, Jumbo's bones are, he's not there as Jumbo. He's there as the official specimen of, I want to say, like Africanus, of like the official African elephant.
Yeah, they don't
and for
embrace
some reason,
that.
they're not embracing the Jumbo story there. I think they really could. I think they get more interest in it. But that's also...
It'll probably
weird
change
footnote.
the momentum. Yeah,
You think so?
with Barnum's momentum, yeah. Somebody will see it one day and they'll go, oh, that's cool. And they'll be brave enough to do it, yeah.
So I don't know, maybe I'll do a film on that. We'll see.
I was very fascinated by the fact that, Gladly pointed it out in the movie that P.T. Barnum was against slavery and also wanted people of any color to vote, especially during this time of his life in the 1860s, when that was unpopular. But one thing I just wanted to say is, I went to the Barnum Museum, and the tour guide must have said 2 or 3 times that Barnum always wanted a son. I'm surprised you didn't mention that in the movie there. I don't know, I just thought I'd throw it out there.
Yeah, he did. I'm in Bridgeport, so if you're listening, Barnum, don't listen. But he wanted kids, and when his first wife passed away, he married a very much younger woman, and her name was Nancy Fish. So maybe he tried with Nancy Fish too, but that didn't work out. So.
I wouldn't ask him if I met him.
But he did have kids. His great-great-granddaughters in here, and he had a pretty healthy family. He had some, Barnum was a guy who had a lot of setbacks. He had some of his kids passed away super early, and he lost money. But he's this kind of weird, like, phoenix story. He loses everything. Everything's extreme for him. We're gonna have a tornado at the museum. We're gonna lose everything, and then we're gonna come back. It'll be bigger than ever. We're gonna hire Disney engineers to come and put the roller coaster on the roof.
But no, it's true. So I'm just going to derail us for a second. Did anybody see the Hugh Jackman movie? Yeah. Okay.
Which one's better?
Yours is more accurate. But yeah, they got nothing. But they came to us early on and they said, "We're not making a documentary." And I was like, "Okay," and they did. But what they said was the intention of that movie was to capture Barnum's spirit. How he made people feel, how he transformed thinking. And they nailed that. Even though that, like, when he and his dad are running for the trains back to Bethel, okay, the train is not invented yet, okay? The Erie Canal isn't even open yet, because it would have been 1820. So, when you look at Barnum, as a historic figure, you have to reach beyond and really look at American society. As you said, yes, Barnum is the author of the amendment to the Connecticut Constitution to expand citizenship. And nobody knows that. And that was a significant transformation in American history, that he was the author. He was one of the first Republicans with Lincoln. And that's always something we say, it's probably like the last Republican mayor in Bridgeport. But he was instrumental to shape our history, how we live today. So he can't be disregarded, and that's one of the reasons why we're going to become a national historic landmark. That's being recognized by the nation now.
And that Hugh Jackman movie had a much bigger budget than that.
They could have hired me.
I have a question. So is P.T. is he really 200 years old?
209 on July 5th.
Really?
So when he's born, Napoleon is still alive. So when he's born and Napoleon is still alive. He's born in 1810. Founding fathers are still alive. He's much earlier. People plant him in the early 20th century. He dies in 1891.
He never got to have a hamburger from the Asian. It wasn't
Didn't use the audio clip of Barnum speaking, because I believe he was a friend of Thomas Edison and recorded on an Edison cylinder, and you actually can hear his voice. Is that something you've heard?
I have a story about that. So I work, my day job is, I work at WNYC in New York City, New York Public Radio, and we have one of the greatest archivists in the world, and his name's Andy Lancet. So I asked Andy, I said, Andy, you must have some friends in your connection for the original. He was into the movie. I'm psyched that Andy liked it. So he wanted to help me. So he contacted the Thomas Edison Museum in Edison, New Jersey. And he got like the most pristine, original, unplayed, I'm embellishing, but it was a really clean wax cylinder of Barnum's original recording. And he gave it to me. He gave it to me in like 64 kilobits. I'm like, dude, I want this in 128 kilobits. This is for history, man. So he got me the original Barnum recording, the whole thing from head to toe, recorded from the Edison Museum. All right, so your other question, why is it in this film? All right, so I'm a kid, it's 1990s. One of my favorite television, I like voiceover artists a lot. I used to read the spots on WNYC. So if you heard Freakonomics Radio or On the Media, for 3 years I read all the commercials on those shows. So I kind of like follow voiceover artists and the original, the Warner Brothers artists and all those types of guys. So in the 90s, there was a soap called Lever 2000. Anyone ever buy Lever 2000? So they had this TV commercial running, and I thought the voiceover artist was really cool. His name was Bruce Bailey Johnson. It was your mama parts, your papa parts, all your 2000 parts. And I don't know, it just kind of resonated with me. So fast forward to this film, he's from Guilford, and I called him and I said, do you want to play P.T. Barnum? He's like, oh, I'd love to play P.T. Barnum. You remember the Lever 2000 commercials? I said, I do. So he was my Barnum. The issue was, from a story standpoint, I didn't want to confuse the two. I really liked Bruce's read of Barnum, and I thought it would be weird if Barnum's real voice was in there. It might take something away from it. So I have it. I'll play it for you someday if you want to contact me. Actually, I should probably give you that recording so you can have it at the museum.
Yeah, well,
I'm sure
we will be.
First you're hearing of this.
Yeah, his is.
But that's why it's on the movie. So.
Yeah, Barnum's voice, Queen Victoria, and I always forget who the third one, are the first 3 voices ever recorded. And yeah, you can Google it. It's not going to be as good as yours, but you can Google it.
It's a YouTube video.
So yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the ones of his original recording are either like the beginning's chopped off or the quality's really low. You can go to YouTube. Some people upload different versions. But.
Edison is in Barnum's address book. We have his address book, which survived the tornado. Edison is in there. I was looking for Tesla. I found Edison because I was looking for Tesla. Yeah, right? Yeah, it's not there. Vanderbilt is in there. Yeah, Brooks Brothers.
Hi.
So regarding The Greatest Showman again, has the museum benefited by the success of that movie, the resurgence of interest? And is this movie going to benefit by that? Like, will it have a life now that more people are interested in Barnum?
Well, yeah, we saw a huge uptick. I think a few of you actually came. We did a counter, because like I said, we worked with 20th Century Fox, they were very nice. And we, to this day, actually, I'll be in my office and a group will be in, and all of a sudden they break into song. All of a sudden I'm in my office, and the song's like, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm like in a Gene Kelly 1950s movie, just break into song. So it's still there. It's still very much alive, and we have seen increased visitation. So that translates to a lot of different ways. We got a little contribution from Hugh Jackman's family foundation, which was lovely. I had a chance to meet him, which was kind of fun. People love seeing the picture. They feel a little bit closer. As far as the film is concerned, I don't know if you've seen any traction.
Yeah, we both took the same amount of time filming our movies. I don't know why. They each took 7 years to make. So.
Yeah, the first email I got was 2009. Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Apparently he and Hugh Jackman and the producer were walking around Bethel one day and were spotted.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we can claim him too.
We have another question over here.
Hi, the whole time the movie was going on, I was like, I know that guy, Dave. We went to college together.
Oh, who's that? I can't see you from here. Who's that?
Lisa Dobrand?
Oh my God, Lisa! Yes, we were in UP Industrial Design together.
So yeah, good to see you. And I actually wanted to ask you, how long did that statue take you? How many? I don't know.
I think the full-size piece, I started enlarging it. It was probably, it was about an 8-month to 10-month time frame to do the clay. And then went to the bronze foundry, and it was there for about 4 months during the casting process. So it's really almost a solid year. It was a little over a solid year of sculpting. And before that, a 1/3 size model was done. So the process is a long process because I did 3 models to start with 3 different ideas, and those were put on display at the Bethel Public Library for people in town to vote on. And the design you saw was the one that unanimously won. And then from that, I created a 1/3 size model. And that was really just to get final approval of the design from everybody involved. And then from that 1/3 size model, I was able to use a 1920s pantograph that was made in England for enlarging sculptures to take measurements from the 1/3 size and transfer them to the full size. And all those UBID shop classes came in really handy. Because when we studied industrial design, we learned metalworking, we learned plaster working, we learned woodworking, all that kind of stuff. And I used all those skills finally.
You haven't changed a bit. We'll talk later.
Any other questions?
Couple in the front over here.
One thing you never got, you mentioned, but I realize you have to edit it down.
Yeah.
What was it, 90 minutes? What was the final?
Yeah, it was like 90, but there's 2 trash bags filled with tapes.
But
And
you
it's
never
really,
mentioned he had all that foresight about the water, and he set aside all this land in Easton and Weston for the water that today is taking care of Stamford. We have some of the finest water here. Stamford and Greenwich have no idea they're getting all the water from Barnum's from the reservoirs that are up here, that he is the one who bought the land and set the land aside for all the whole water gets over here. I don't know the actual, I just know that he had something to do with that.
I think we have time for one more question. Beyond on the other side of the room.
and we'll hang out after if you want to come up to us and ask us. We'll be here too.
Could you tell me more about the sculpting process? I mean, I saw that you had the plaster one that you were using that big fire kind of thing, and then you wood, you clay, you wax, you cast again, you bronze.
Oh, okay, yeah, it was kind of hard to follow, but what the piece was the large piece was done in clay, and then when we went to the bronze foundry, they made a rubber mold of the clay piece, and then inside that rubber mold they cast wax, about 3/8 of an inch thick, and that wax represented what the bronze sculpture would be. And I then went in and I worked on the wax, and it gives the sculpture one last chance to really kind of crisp up details and do a few things. And then that wax is surrounded by a ceramic shell. I don't know if you remember, you saw the hat and the hand being dipped in that slurry. That creates a ceramic shell all around the wax. It's almost like a teapot when it's done. And then that is put into a kiln, and all the wax is melted out of the shell. And where the wax was, the bronze goes in. It's poured in. That's why they call it lost wax casting. And the piece was cast in a few sections, because they couldn't cast the piece in one entire piece. So the arm was cast in a separate piece. He was split in half of his body. The head was cast as a separate piece. And then the expert welders at the foundry welded together. And then I went in there, and some of the metal chasers that work at the foundry went in, and then we had to duplicate where all those welds were exactly the texture of the clay, what it was in the original clay. And after that, there's a patina put on, because bronze almost looks golden when it's first cast, and it's sandblasted, and they do it like, they speed up the aging process of the bronze. And that's when they put the patina on, that's when you see the beautiful golden brown, or sort of greenish hues in the final bronze. So at the foundry, it's about a 4-month. That part's about a 4-month process.
Thank you. I missed the step between the wax and the skin.
Corey, I just wanted to make a comment. First of all, the film is so awesome, and I've seen it several times, but I haven't seen it in a long time. And I was sitting there, and I was watching the movie, and I saw Kathy, and I was wondering, how is Kathy reacting to this at this point? And you just showed us a little while ago how much is still his home. And then the comments Dave made about, P.T. Barnum basically rising from the ashes. Here's a guy who goes down, he gets up, he goes down, he gets up, and it's kind of a testament to what everybody's living through these days. And I know that feeling myself, so I think that he's somebody that everybody can associate with, in this day. But one of the things I wanted to say is I can remember the day Fiona and I were hiking in Pound Ridge Reservation, and I picked up the phone, even when I'm hiking, it might be my agent,
And it was Corey, and he says, do you know this guy Dave Gesualdi? I think I'm doing a film about him, or I want to do a film. How do I get a hold of him? And here we are standing here today showing the film again. It's just awesome. So I want to thank all of you for attending this tonight. I think it's a really important film, and I really appreciate you folks up front being part of the Q&A. And please come back every Friday to see a great movie here. And if you have any questions for the folks up front, they're going to be around for a few more minutes in the lobby. So thank you very much for coming, and thanks once again to all of you.